When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, revenge of the Ramonas. As Slim Priest Starmer promotes anti-Brexit campaigners to his shadow cabinet, is Labour gearing up to betray the British people by returning to the EU? Our Brexit hero Nigel Farage is standing by to give his live, unmissable analysis shortly. Another big winner from Sir Flip-Flop's reshuffle was his new shadow Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner, whose most notable political moment is this rabid rant.
We cannot get any worse than a bunch of scum, homophobic, racist, misogynistic, absolute vile.
So would you be happy with that woman as your Deputy PM? Edwina Currie, Dame Andrea Jenkins and Paul Connew do battle in the clash. Also coming up, was Education Secretary Jillian Keegan's hot mic moment released cynically by woke ITV News really a sackable offence? Or is it a telltale sign of our broken mainstream media? My superstar panel will debate that later in the show. And tonight, we've got a brand new addition to our Tuesday team who could not be more qualified to take on every major hot topic. It's former Conservative Cabinet Minister Esther McVey, who will be teaming up with our favourites Calvin Robinson and Rebecca Reid. Elsewhere on the show, Princess Diana's brother took on the BBC in court today over the alleged Martin Bashir Panorama cover-up. So will the truth about the infamous interview finally out and bring down the Beeb? Esteemed biographer Tom Bauer is uncancelled to give his unfiltered analysis on this major breaking news story. Plus, as Tavistock whistleblowers warn Rishi Sunak that children must not be allowed to change their gender at school, US media megastar Megyn Kelly tells me why she's campaigning for parents to be included in gender discussion with their kids. And Bake Off goes woke as its spineless producers axe light-hearted national theme weeks to save snowflakes from offence.
Although I don't feel like we should make Mexican jokes because people will get upset.
Oh, no Mexican jokes at all?
I don't think so.
What, not even one?
Not even one.
Well, that's now cancelled. The theme week, so celebrity chef Anthony Worrell Thompson is going to weigh in on this latest PC madness. As always, tomorrow's newspaper front page is hot off the press too. This is Dan Wootton Tonight. Let's go. You're watching GB News, Britain's news channel. Can you believe it is 1 year since Liz Truss began her tragically stunted premiership? And next, I'll bring you a special digest on why she has been proven right and the establishment that brought her down wrong. First, though, the news with Aaron Armstrong.
Very good evening to you. Aaron Armstrong here with the latest from the GB newsroom. Let's get you up to date with the headlines. The Mayor of the West Midlands says the financial issues affecting Birmingham City Council are deeply concerning and people there deserve much better. Europe's largest local authority has declared it's effectively bankrupt due to a £760 million bill for equal pay claims. Conservative Mayor Andy Street says it raises concerns about the way the Labour-led council's been run. All new spending, with the exception of vital services and protecting vulnerable people, will stop immediately. More onshore wind farms are expected to be built as a result of new rules announced by the government. Projects supported by local people will be approved more quickly, and communities will also have a greater say in how developments are considered. The new rules come amid fears of a backbench rebellion and represent a U-turn from Rishi Sunak, who in October said he intended to continue with a ban on new onshore farms. The Shadow Climate Secretary Ed Miliband says the ban has exacerbated the cost of living crisis.
The government is being held to ransom by a bunch of Tory backbenchers who since 2015 have stopped onshore wind being built in England. And that has raised bills for families by £180 for every family in Britain. You know, we're going through a cost of living crisis. Surely now those individuals, those Conservative MPs can see that it's much better to have onshore wind built and cut bills for families.
The Schools Minister says the government has been proactive in dealing with the concrete crisis and has been issuing guidance since 2018. Speaking to GB News, Nick Gibbs' comments come after the Education Secretary Jillian Keegan was forced to apologise for using strong language while expressing her frustration at the situation. Both Ms Keegan and the Prime Minister are under growing pressure as more than 100 schools across the UK have fully or partially closed. Laughing gas is set to become an illegal Class C substance by the end of the year. Those caught using nitrous oxide could face up to 2 years in prison and unlimited fines. Those caught dealing or producing it could be jailed for up to 14 years in prison under the new rules. It's part of a government pledge to tackle antisocial behaviour. One person's died and another is in a critical condition after a crash involving a 52-seater coach and a car on a bridge took place in West Wales. The collision happened on the Cleddau Bridge in Pembrokeshire. It left one of the drivers trapped. Police say the road is currently closed between the Honeyborough and the Pembroke roundabouts, and drivers advised to take an alternative route. And the Spanish women's head coach Jorge Vilda has been sacked in the wake of the unsolicited kiss controversy. He led Spain to World Cup glory last month, beating England in the final. But the achievement's been overshadowed by the ongoing rows surrounding the Federation President Luis Rubiales, who kissed midfielder Jenny Hermoso on the lips during the medal ceremony. Vilda was seen as a close ally of Rubiales. He is refusing to resign. That is it from me for the moment. I'll be back with more in about an hour's time. Now it's over to Dan.
One year ago today, Liz Truss became the leader of the Conservative Party and was primed and ready to be the Prime Minister Britain truly needed. She was determined to defeat the economic establishment and deliver real growth to our faltering economy of 2.5% annually through cutting taxes and deregulation. She was determined to beat the woke blob and stop the civil service frustrating small c conservatism at every turn. But within days, despite securing an overwhelming mandate from Conservative members, it was clear Truss was not going to be allowed to succeed. As the only real Conservative left in the room, she knew she was doomed. In the second anti-democratic coup within months, a globalist cabal, using the British mainstream media, allowed Tory MPs to install the man they'd always wanted in the job, Rishi Sunak. and the UK's opportunity for a once-in-a-generation economic reset was lost, ushering in, I think, the near certainty of a Labour-led socialist coalition from hell. Now, look, I happily concede, she does too. Truss got a lot wrong. She went too fast. She didn't properly communicate her changes. But that didn't matter, because she was never going to be allowed to succeed, which is chilling in terms of its repercussions for British democracy. Even economic experts concede the reaction to the Truss Kwarteng mini-budget was hysterical. So why does she think she was forced out? Well, in the past year, Truss has done very little, but is gathering her strength to take on the anti-growth coalition. In her only major set-piece UK television interview since leaving Downing Street, she explained it to me like this.
I wondered if you had heard these comments from the former Bank of England Governor Megyn Kelly this week, who said the reaction to your mini-budget was, quote, hysterical.
The reason I did what I did is I believed there was an urgent situation. That the British economy hadn't been growing for years and years and years. People's incomes weren't going up. We weren't attracting the businesses, the investment, the dynamism that we all want to see. And what does that ultimately mean? It means people are able to afford, better places to live. I do believe it had the support of the public and of Conservative Party members. The problem is there is a groupthink around what I call the economic establishment that is very set in its ways about the current policy, which is high taxes, massive size of government. I mean, do you know that 47% of GDP is now spent by the government? I don't think that's the way you get a dynamic economy. I don't think that's the way you help businesses.
Indeed. Now look, Trussonomics was not launched successfully or sensibly, but trust me, it was never going to be allowed to succeed. As The Economist, Julian Jessup, wrote of her mini-budget in the Daily Telegraph just this week, there was nothing here that should have triggered a market crisis. The MSM will still try and tell you today that every problem faced economically as a result of Truss. They are lying to you. We have been cheated out of a reforming Prime Minister who could have saved broken Britain. And I'm still not over it. But to respond now, my superstar panel. Making her debut, the former Conservative Cabinet Minister who sat in that cabinet under David Cameron, Theresa May and Boris Johnson, Esther McVey. The Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson, and the author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Now, Calvin Robinson, you agree with me, you think Liz Truss was right?
I think she was right on her economic policies, but I think it was a stitch-up from the beginning. They clearly wanted Rishi Sunak in. The membership wanted Suella Braverman or Kemi Badenoch. They did not let it get to that point in the voting. They put Rishi up against someone they thought he would win against. He did not. Liz Truss won, so she was rightfully the leader of the party and the Prime Minister, and they orchestrated a coup to get rid of her. Her economic policies would have been much better than what we're seeing at the moment, but she's still not a Conservative. She's a neoliberal. All she cares about is the economy. She doesn't care about the social issues that are pulling down this country.
Well, I think that is a little bit unfair, though, because if you look at her brief, for example, when she was in the Equalities portfolio, she was one of the only cabinet ministers that was prepared to stand up against the extreme gender ideology and actually take on the trans lobby.
That's a fair point, but her obsession is all about the GDP. The way to fix the country is the GDP. I think that's a very old-fashioned way of looking at things, because people care a lot more about a lot more things than just the GDP.
That is true. That is true. Now, Esther, you say the issue was that Truss, while great in certain ways, was a bit like a bull in a china shop when she went into number 10. So you're very experienced as a cabinet minister. What should she have done? Was it her fault?
She said that she was in a rush. She thought maybe she only had so much time in the job, that she went too fast, said it was a mini budget when actually it was a maxi budget, yes. And really startled too many people. Yeah. So that's what happened. So I would say it was politically naive. There was lots of things she had to explain. It was a big change that we were going through. So I don't disagree with we need a growth agenda, and I don't disagree that you need a small state, low tax. So all those things are right, but I fear she's put back, which I call conservatism back, a lot long time because she did spook the market. She says she believes in market forces. They brought her down because she didn't lay the groundwork. Plus, the most important thing, she didn't balance her budget. Now, if she'd have said, I'm going to cut HS2, save 150 billion, and I'm going to cut other things, and this will pay for those tax reductions and those energy bills that we're going to pay, then I think she would have been fine. But I don't believe everybody wanted her out before she was in. I'm afraid she just did it too quick and startled too many people. And you know what it's like? People panic and they run like sheep and they follow everybody, and that was it.
Interesting. Rebecca Reid, who do you agree with, Esther or Calvin?
I think I agree with Esther. Whenever we talk about economics, I'm always aware that I'm actually, in some ways, a good person to talk about it, because like a lot of people in this country, when you get into the absolute nitty-gritty of what a GDPR does, I don't understand the total mechanism of it. What I understood was from the outside, what I was hearing was, she's made a really scary budget that's going to make bad things happen. And I was going, oh, no, well, that doesn't sound good. But then I also hear, taxes lower. That does sound good. People having more money. That does sound good. So I guess I'm left wondering, if it was a workable budget and it was going to give people more money and there was going to be lower taxes, why would everybody have wanted her out? If she had a good idea, why would they want to get rid of her?
Because, like I said, she didn't balance it. So all of a sudden, what you saw was a depletion of funds without it balancing the books, and that scares everybody.
Well,
but everybody's saying, how are you paying for that?
I totally understand your logic.
Calvin, I think you would probably say, like I would, because it is part of a globalist agenda. Absolutely. And she didn't fit the high tax, low growth, let's own nothing globalist agenda.
Globalist neo-Marxist agenda. We saw Jeremy Hunt practically taken over before she'd even left office, and Rishi Sunak, of course,
She appointed him. But if you were...
Yeah, but he then got rid of her entire economic agenda.
I think she was then crushed through her confidence. I think then she all of a sudden was sort of shell-shocked and she went into herself. But remember, she did appoint...
But it feels like we're making weird allowances for her. If you're bad enough at being Prime Minister that Jeremy Hunt can come in and undermine you, and you can't put across what apparently was a good idea...
It was finished at that.
The mistake was getting rid of Kwasi Kwarteng, wasn't it?
It was finished the moment... Well, actually, I'd even say before that, it was finished the moment that they rolled back on some of the big innovations in the mini-budget. Esther, can I just ask you politically at the moment, because obviously, you are so close to Tory MPs. I look at the polling, I look at the latest Conservative Home survey, which now has Rishi Sunak totally disapproved of by your own members. This wasn't the answer, was it? It wasn't the answer, having Sunak in.
But what Sunak gave at the time and what people wanted was a diligent, conscientious, somebody they thought could balance the books, get that competence back. People think Conservatives need to be competent.
But it did work,
and that's what he did. But at the moment, I would say, for me, we're not being conservative enough.
Yeah.
For me, we're not being bold enough. Yeah. We're not doing what I would say is common sense conservative policies. And there are big problems now that actually what Liz was trying to do was do a big solution for big problems. After lockdown, there are so many things that need to be done. And I believe that Rishi and the Conservative Party needs to be bolder and solve them. So now is the time for what Liz had to say.
But he did cauterise the problem. And things are slightly better than they were. Like in what?
Well, that's slightly better for people like you who want a Labour government in, because right now there's no difference.
To be honest, the worse it goes, the better it goes.
The only thing we have to... I mean, Liz did collapse our polls as well with Boris. Conservatives were 12 points behind. Liz did collapse it to 35% behind, and that's what did her in. People worried about where she was going and what she...
Well, it's interesting you mentioned lockdown because, of course, you were one of the only Conservative MPs who was challenging the lockdown measures at the time. And I give you huge credit for that, and we'll talk about it as the weeks go on, because, of course, it's why we're here now.
Totally.
It's why we're here now. And if more people listened to MPs like you in the Conservative Party at the time, we wouldn't be facing this financial crisis.
We've lived under socialism for the last 2 years.
Yeah, but it was Rishi who was writing.
We're going to get some real socialism. Don't worry, guys, we're going to get some real socialism in the next year.
It's never
that's coming, believe me, that's coming. Rebecca Reid, Calvin Robinson and Esther McVeigh, great to have you here. And they're with me all night, of course, but also coming up as members of Keir Starmer's campaign for a second referendum to reverse Brexit are promoted. Is Lee Anderson right that Labour is gearing up for a quick return to the EU? Nigel Farage gives his unmissable analysis live shortly. But first in the clash, as she has promoted within that reshuffle, would you be happy with Angela Rayner as Deputy Prime Minister? Well, former newspaper editor Paul Connew, Conservative grandee Edwina Currie and ex-Tory Education Minister Dame Andrea Jenkins do battle on that next. But what do you think down at gbnews.com? Vote in our poll at GB News on Twitter, or is it X now? The Clash after this.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Nigel Farage and US media megastar Megyn Kelly both still to come this hour. First, though, the clash. And one of the big winners from Slippery Starmer's reshuffle yesterday was Angela Rayner after she was named Shadow Deputy Prime Minister. Now, Rayner has proclaimed herself John Prescott in a skirt, and Labour will be hoping she can be a working-class tonic to Sir Flip-Flop's robotic personality. But is someone who spouts bile like this really fit for Downing Street?
We cannot get any worse than a bunch of scum, homophobic, racist, misogynistic, absolute banana republic, child nasty, Etonian privilege, piece of scum.
How prime ministerial. So would you be happy with Angela Rayner as Deputy PM? Down at gbnews.com, vote in our poll at GBNews on Twitter. But to debate this now, former newspaper editor Paul Connew, Conservative grandee Edwina Currie and ex-Tory Education Minister Dame Andrea Jenkins. Edwina, she's not cut out to be Deputy Prime Minister, is she, after calling folk like you scum?
Well, calling me an Etonian as well, that doesn't work. Not for me, it doesn't. Look, let's be quite clear about this. Being gobby in politics never ends well. And I'm the expert on that.
You know all about it.
This is not going to end well for her, because sooner or later that big mouth of hers is going to come out. You know, if she's ever anywhere near power. I mean, let's just remind ourselves they're the opposition. They're Her Majesty, His Majesty's opposition right now, and I hope they stay there for a very much longer period. But you get anywhere near power and you start talking like that, and you don't have the excuse that you've had a few drinks or you're being a little bit over the top or whatever, that's when all the attention is on you and not on the topic, the subject that you are trying to promote or the policy you're trying to explain. But it's more than that, that whole nasty thing. You know, during lockdown, a lot of things went wrong, but one of the nicer bits of it was #BeKind. And a lot of people were kind to each other. And it seems to me that people like Rayner have never subscribed to that kind of philosophy in politics. They've never, ever thought about being kind to anybody else or understanding any other points of view. It brings a very nasty element into politics. It's very vicious, and it perpetuates the idea that to be a successful woman in politics, you've got to be really, really nasty and vicious about your opponents. And I don't think that's right.
Paul Connew, how do you respond?
I could have guaranteed, Dan, that was the clip you were going to play of
well, it's
Angela
her,
Rayner.
isn't it?
And yeah, it wasn't her finest hour by any means. But I can name some other very good ones. But she's savvy, she's media savvy, she's street smart, and she'll play well in the red wall. That joke she made, but well, actually it's only half a joke about being John Prescott in skirts, you know, is actually going to work, I think. I mean, the same way that the Blair-Prescott tandem worked, I think Starmer, the urbane, slightly dull lawyer, with the contrast of the woman with her sort of working class, in fact, with a very powerful backstory. I think the chemistry will work, especially as the Red Wall is now very disillusioned with the Tory government.
Okay.
And according
well,
to
let me bring Dame Andrea Jenkinson. Dame Andrea, do you support her as, you know, a fellow female politician speaking out?
Absolutely not, Dan. And I have to say, as somebody in a red wall seat who is also working class, you know, calling people scum does not play down well in red wall areas. And let's not forget, Dan, this is the woman, along with Keir Starmer, who actually really supported Corbyn. And they also tried to stop Brexit, Dan.
Yes.
I was in the lobby trying to fight for Brexit. They was in the opposition lobbies trying to stop Brexit. They want second referendums. They will take us back into
that. We can't forget that.
And with hindsight,
and
the
also, Dan,
the public now wish to stop Brexit, but still.
Yes, but besides that, let's not forget, they backed Corbyn, who wanted rid of the nuclear deterrent, they wanted to come out of NATO. Where would Ukraine be now if that had happened under a Labour government? They are dangerous.
Well, I left Labour
and
temporarily because of Jeremy Corbyn, so I...
moderate.
Yeah, but
they're trying to
Edwina,
act that the moderate, they're actually Corbynistas. They backed him 100%.
And Edwina, that is a fair point, isn't it? I mean, we should not forget the extreme man that Angela Rayner wanted to be our Prime Minister, and the fact that she tried to overturn the biggest British democratic mandate in history.
Oh, and bear in mind as well that she started her career as the head of Unison up here in the northwest. She was in Stockport, just up the road from where I live. A Labour government led by people like her and she would be very much the power behind the throne, is going to be so in hock to the trade unions. Oh, yeah, they'd have sorted out the strikes. They'd have sorted out the strikes by giving 20, 30% pay rises. And we all know, or anybody my sort of background and age knows, what that does to inflation. It just keeps it in the system. And who loses most from it? The poorest lose most from it. So in that respect, you know, Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt are absolutely right to take that view. And Angela Rayner would do exactly the opposite. They would scrap an awful lot of the anti-trade union legislation, and we'd have a hell of a lot more strikes plus inflation.
Edwina Currie, Paul Connew, Dame Andrea Jenkins, thank you all so much. But who do you agree with? Would you be happy with Angela Rayner as Deputy Prime Minister? Diane writes via Twitter, absolutely not. I can't think of anything worse than her representing the UK on the world stage. What a laughingstock would be. Remember, they've got David Lammy too as Foreign Secretary. Good God. Chris writes, good grief, no, but there are very few other suitable options available in Keir Starmer's oddball shadow cabinet. From Lucy, definitely not. She lacks all the skills of a leader and is unable to debate respectfully. It's already embarrassing that she's in the position she's in. Your verdict's now in. 16% of you say you would be happy with Rayner as Deputy PM. 84% of you say no, 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 no. Nigel Farage, Megyn Kelly, live after the weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again. As we go through the next 24 hours, some of us will have a bit of low cloud and fog overnight, but then it's the return of the hot sunshine tomorrow, albeit with the chance of a few showers. Looking at the big picture, and you can see high pressure dominating the weather across the UK, but we are going to have something of an easterly wind pushing its way in, and on that easterly, we're going to drag in some low cloud, some sea fog in from the North Sea, affecting eastern parts of England and also eastern Scotland, where we're likely to see a little bit of drizzly rain overnight. Elsewhere, further south and west, clear skies, a few pockets of mist and fog though, and temperatures not dropping a huge amount. Some places staying above 20 Celsius tonight, a tropical night for some, but a difficult night for sleeping. A cloudy start then down the eastern side of the UK on Wednesday, but that low cloud, that murk, is going to quite quickly burn back towards the coast for most of us. I say for most because across eastern parts of Scotland we're likely to hold on to some of that low cloud. Otherwise, lots of sunshine around, but perhaps a bit cloudier for some, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland. Look at those temperatures though, a little bit higher than today, likely to see highs around 32 or 33 Celsius. Into Thursday, and there's the chance of some heavy thundery showers making their way northwards up the western side of the UK. More central and eastern parts of the country are likely to stay drier and sunnier, and temperatures are going to be similar to tomorrow, really. Again, likely to see highs of 32 or 33 before something perhaps cooler by the weekend.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Coming up, as whistleblowers of the disgraced Tavistock clinic tell Rishi Sunak that children must not be allowed to change their gender at school, US media megastar Megyn Kelly explains why she's campaigning for parents to be included in gender discussions with their kids. But first, as Sipri Starmer promotes pro-EU campaigners to his shadow cabinet, is Labour laying the groundwork for a major Brexit betrayal while Britain's vote leave hero Nigel Farage tackles that and the latest debanking developments? He's live straight after this.
This September, the GB News family is back together. From breakfast, right across the day, breaking the latest stories, and every evening. And don't forget the weekend. We've got the whole of the UK covered. Every week, we'll be hearing your views from up and down the country, with fun, lively and intelligent conversation with the biggest guests. This September, we'll meet Chris and John. Thank you for choosing GB News. We're proud to be Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Megyn Kelly live shortly. First, though, time for What the Farage with Brexit broker Nigel and Slippery Starmer's shadow cabinet reshuffle has promoted allies from his undemocratic People's Vote campaign, which called for a second referendum to reverse Brexit. Hilary Benn back on the front benches as Shadow Northern Ireland Secretary, with Liz Kendall, Steve Reid and Ali Reeves also upped. Deputy Chair of the Conservatives, Lee Anderson, who left the Labour Party over Brexit, warned it looks like Labour are gearing up for a quick return into the EU. Be in no doubt, this is a clear statement of intent to rejoin the EU at the earliest opportunity. So, Nigel, is Lee right that Starmer's reshuffle proves Labour's desire to reverse Brexit and rejoin the EU?
Well, Starmer's reshuffle is, of course, Blairite. It's globalist. It's pro-EU. All of that's entirely true. They would, of course, in government, which now looks, I think, inevitable, take us much closer to the single market, would align with EU rules. And, of course, they'll find that very easy to do because we haven't diverged. But are they going to take us back into European Union membership? I don't think so. If they did, they'd be a one-term Labour government because those splits would re-emerge. You know, I mean, here's the funny thing now. You know, in all the years of the insurgency, the UKIP insurgency, everyone thought Farage will damage the Conservatives. Ultimately, I damaged the Labour Party far more than the Conservatives because of that traditional, patriotic, Tommy Atkins, as I call it, working class base. They would be literally mad to either take us back into the EU or try and force a referendum upon us. So, no, we're going to finish up with Brino. Brexit.
That's what I was going to say, yeah. We're just going to have a crap Brexit, Nigel, under Labour.
Yes, although I think, Dan, to be fair, you know, the vast majority of the Tory cabinet were Remainers. They never actually believed in Brexit. They were just forced into it. And that's really been the great problem ever since 2016, is that the people told Parliament, you're wrong, and Parliament kind of just never really accepted it. And that's why we've not made a better job of it. On the world stage, Brexit's a huge success. our standing in the world, our diplomatic ability. We can sign up Trans-Pacific Partnership deals. We can do AUKUS deals. We can take the lead on Ukraine, and you can agree or disagree with those positions. But we've done those things very decisively, very clearly, the vaccine rollout, etc. But when it comes to people watching this program, running their own businesses, they would say Brexit's made no difference because we just haven't diverged or moved away. So, the truth of it is we're not in a good place. There are many people out there who are disenchanted with the way Brexit's been delivered. They say, oh, God, it's failed me. It's not delivered on immigration and other issues what I wanted. But no, Lee says what he says. Don't forget, Lee wouldn't be an MP without Brexit. Ashfield would never have gone Conservative without Brexit. So I understand his suspicion. I understand his desire for political survival. Rejoining as a full member ain't going to happen.
Now, Nigel, your heroic debanking campaign continues to have a massive impact. Today, the Financial Conduct Authority has confirmed that banks who wrongly deny accounts to politicians will face fines in the future. But do fines go far enough? And actually, doesn't it need to be much wider? This is talking about politicians, but actually, shouldn't the sinister practice of debanking be illegal overall for anyone?
Yes. I mean, fines mean nothing. Absolutely nothing. I mean, don't forget the British banking industry last year made profits of 35 billion sterling. You fine them 100 million, so blooming what? Ultimately, this is about banking licenses. That is where the power lies. And here's the interesting thing. Whose job is this to get it right? Is it the FCA's or is it the government's? And my own feeling is that the FCA are there rather like a court. They should be taking instructions from government, right, and then implementing them. It's not for the FCA to decide what the law is. And here is my concern about Labour. When they come into power next year, any hope of genuine banking reform will be out of the window. So we have a very, very short time frame here where Andrew Griffith and Jeremy Hunt need to get this right and get it right for the well-being of our reputation as a place to do business globally, but also just the plain rights and wrongs of the individual, regardless whether they're a small trader selling fish or the son of a cabinet minister and a politically exposed person. Dan, of course, I'm delighted that every single day there are rumblings from what I've uncovered in the banking industry, but we need this to move into firm action. I'm hopeful we're going to make progress, but we haven't got long.
No, indeed. Now, look, Nigel, our scorching weather, which is great on lots of fronts, is unfortunately causing a huge leap in illegal migrants arriving. 872 brought on shore on Saturday alone. That's a record for the year. It could be broken again, of course, at some point over the next few days. What do you predict is going to happen this week, Nigel, with the invasion of our southern border?
Yeah, we've had the last couple of days have seen boats coming, but it's been quite a puffy northeasterly blowing. From tomorrow, for the next 6 days, the forecast is the channel being absolutely flat calm. This will be big. I will predict September will be the biggest month ever in terms of illegal migration of young men across the English Channel. And Rishi Sunak, for all the stop the boats talk, now he's rather changed tune, hasn't he? And said how difficult it is. We have a gutless, weak government. Years ago, we would deport illegal immigrants. Now we don't do it. The British judiciary relying upon terms of the ECHR, nobody with the courage to simply get on with it. A country getting angrier and angrier. Yes, of course, Labour won't be any better, but that's not the point. We have had, literally, the last 4 Conservative prime ministers have all promised to tackle illegal immigration. Boris Johnson, Theresa May, David Cameron, Rishi Sunak have all said, if you come here illegally, you won't be allowed to stay. And now we hardly deport anybody. So I'm afraid, folks, it's going to get worse.
Wow, worrying prediction there from Nigel. That September could be the biggest month in terms of illegal immigration via the channel. Really, really worrying times. Nigel Farage back tomorrow night, 7 p.m. here on GB News. Thank you, Nigel. But coming up, as the media and political rivals round on the education secretary as selfish, shameless and not fit to stay in office, should Jillian Keegan really be fighting to keep her job because of woke ITV's Hot Mic broadcast? My Superstar panel return to debate that, and we'll have tomorrow's newspaper front pages too, hot off the press. But first, the fight to keep dangerous gender identity out of our classrooms goes on as Tavistock whistleblowers warn Rishi Sunak that children must not be allowed to change their gender at school. And one woman campaigning to bring parents back into the conversation about their kids' gender is US media superstar Megyn Kelly. She's live with me straight after this.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Celebrity chef Anthony Worrell-Thompson on why Bake Off is going woke shortly. First, though, US media megastar Megyn Kelly. Now, the brave whistleblowers who uncovered the appalling treatment of vulnerable young kids at the Tavistock Gender Clinic have blasted Rishi Sunak for his failure to stop extreme trans ideology from infecting the UK's schools. They told the Prime Minister the government bears some responsibility for the skyrocketing numbers of children arriving at gender clinics demanding puberty blockers and hormones. And across the pond, America's finest Megyn has been waging war on schools that exclude parents from gender discussion with their kids. So, Megyn, why is it that schools are seemingly so keen to get children to transition against the wishes of their parents?
They view the parents as the enemies. And we're talking about young children. I mean, you could have a child as young as 12 going in there, and they would work with the child behind the parent's back. And let me tell you why this is so dangerous, among the many other reasons. If you read Abigail Schreyer's brilliant book, Irreversible Damage, she was ahead of the curve on all of this and sounded the alarm on this problem, especially with teenage girls for whom this tends to be a social contagion. This thing never affected teenage girls. It affects a very small percentage of the population. It was 0.003%, and it was almost always a boy who would show signs of gender confusion at age 2 that would manifest a bit later. Almost never girls. It's a social contagion, what we're seeing right now. She lays out the things that you can do if your child gets drawn into this cult. It's the new cutting. It's the new anorexia. It's the new thing that girls and now boys are turning to, even though they don't actually have gender dysphoria, to express their need for attention, to express their need to sort of fit in now. This is a new way. And you can stop it, Dan. If your kid, if you would be made aware that your kid were suffering from this, she talks about immediately get your kid offline. Do not spend any more time.
Oh no, we've just lost Megyn. We'll try and get her back. But while we're doing that, actually, I want to show you an extraordinary moment breaking tonight. It's just happened at the White House. Joe Biden has bolted out of the room immediately after after awarding the Medal of Honor to the Army Captain Larry Taylor. Now, the ceremony continued on for several minutes afterwards, and clueless Biden completely missed a concluding prayer. Watch this. So, Megyn, we'll return to our previous conversation in just a moment. But first, I wanted your reaction to yet another disturbing gaffe by Biden, which really makes me wonder if he is losing all his faculties.
How can we trust him to run the country when he can't even run a Medal of Honor ceremony properly? He was supposed to stay until the end. There was a closing prayer. He was supposed to be present for it. He bolted. He was once again lost. He didn't know what to do. He couldn't follow the basic procedures for a Medal of Honor recipient. And this is the leader of the free world who's going to be making decisions about Ukraine, about war, about inflation, economic policy. This is not for the faint of heart, this job. 72% of the American people believe that he is too old for the job, according to a Wall Street Journal poll just out today. 72%. 2/3 of Democrats say he is too old to be president. They don't want him, but he's stiff-arming them because he's in the office. He refuses to accept any debates, and yet there's no way, Dan, he can't do it. And the same press that runs cover for him is now breathlessly demanding that Mitch McConnell, the Senate Minority Leader, the top Republican in the U.S. Senate, step down because he's had 2 incidents in the past 6 weeks where he seems to freeze. He freezes up, and they are disturbing, and we deserve answers as to what's going on, which we haven't received. But they can spare me their indignation when they don't apply it to their own candidate who's at the top of the government in the White House, never mind some of their other candidates like Dianne Feinstein, who's 90 and doesn't even know how to vote anymore, who was out for 3 months due to allegedly shingles and came back not remembering that she'd been out for 3 months. Not to mention John Fetterman, who had this traumatic brain, the stroke, who has come back and can't speak any longer. They're fine with that. They only get upset when it's a Republican, and we're supposed to give Joe Biden and these other Democrats a complete pass, or we're ableists and ageists.
No, indeed. It's so worrying. But look, Megyn, we cut you off in your prime. I just wanted to return to the previous conversation because you described what's going on at the moment in terms of trans kids in schools now as a cult. And increasingly, it does feel like, especially in the woke American media, that if you go against that cult, your voice is taken away. I mean, we've seen it this week with Alice Cooper and Roisin Murphy, the Irish singer. Both of them, all they did was question whether kids should be on puberty blockers, and they have been axed. I mean, it's terrifying what happens if you speak out against the cult of kids transitioning.
They need to make sure that they are educated on this before they fold and apologize, right? And I think Alice Cooper did not, but Murphy did.
Roisin Murphy did, yeah, indeed.
Yeah, so but they need to get it together because they were right the first time. Puberty blockers, which are sold as it's just a pause so your child can figure out. 97% of children who go on puberty blockers proceed to cross gender hormones. Once they go down this lane, they do not reverse unless a parent wrests them away from this thing and seizes back control of their child's life, which is your obligation as a normal parent. 90% of children will grow out of this if you just leave them alone. If you don't put them on puberty blockers, they will grow out of it. It's a phase at best. So 97%, if put on puberty blockers, will go to cross-sex hormones. And you know what that does? It sterilizes your child. They want us to believe that an 11-year-old can provide informed consent to sterilization. They will never have children. And not only that, they will never achieve climax. There's no sexual climax for these children. That is coming directly from the transgender activists who in moments of honesty will tell you that's what the data are showing. So you're sterilizing your children and effectively rendering them nearly asexual.
Yeah, indeed. And the whole thing 11. The whole thing is, Megyn, puberty often solves these issues. These are puberty blockers, which means you're blocking the thing that can solve these issues. And it makes me sick because as a young gay kid, I know that if I was growing up today, I would have been pushed down this path. And it is so wrong.
I completely agree with you. And as a girl who was once a tomboy, who only wore little cowboy outfits and jeans and sweatshirts with a boy haircut, they would have tried to force me over into growing a penis, which is an impossibility, but a lie and a myth sold to gender-confused girls. All of this is abuse. And if more people don't stand up to the gender cult, we're going to start losing more and more children. Yeah. It's just a matter of time before the class actions begin. I mean, we saw what happened at Tavistock, but we're just at the beginning of the backlash. It's going to be severe.
It is, and I think you're right to call it a cult. I think I'm going to start doing that too, because that is where we're at. Megyn Kelly, host of the brilliant Megyn Kelly Show. You've got to sign up for it on YouTube or as a podcast. Thank you, Megyn. We will speak next week. But coming up, as it's announced, that the Great British Bake Off will axe its national theme rounds over fears that they could be seen as racist. Of course, our woke TV bosses killing off entertainment in this country. Celebrity chef Anthony Worrell-Thompson offers his exclusive insight in the next hour. But next, was this comical hot mic moment from Education Secretary Jillian Keegan really grounds for her sacking?
Does anyone ever say, you know what, you've done a good job because everyone else has sat on their and done nothing? No signs of that, no?
My superstar panel return to debate whether the pressure she's facing is justified or a sign of our broken media. Plus, you'll get a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages, hot off the press too. And Tom Bauer is live in the studio on this breaking news today that Princess Diana's brother, Earl Spencer, has taken on the BBC in what could be their biggest cover-up ever over Martin Bashir and that Panorama interview. Back soon.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again. As we go through the next 24 hours, some of us will have a bit of low cloud and fog overnight, but then it's the return of the hot sunshine tomorrow, albeit with the chance of a few showers. Looking at the big picture, and you can see high pressure dominating the weather across the UK, but we are going to have something of an easterly wind pushing its way in, and on that easterly, we're going to drag in some low cloud, some sea fog in from the North Sea, affecting eastern parts of England and also eastern Scotland, where we're likely to see a little bit of drizzly rain overnight. Elsewhere, further south and west, clear clear skies, a few pockets of mist and fog though, and temperatures not dropping a huge amount. Some places staying above 20 Celsius tonight, a tropical night for some, but a difficult night for sleeping. A cloudy start then down the eastern side of the UK on Wednesday, but that low cloud, that murk, is going to quite quickly burn back towards the coast for most of us. I say for most because across eastern parts of Scotland we're likely to hold on to some of that low cloud. Otherwise, lots of sunshine around, but perhaps a bit cloudier for some, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland. Look at those temperatures though, a little bit higher than today, likely to see highs around 32 or 33 Celsius. Into Thursday, and there's the chance of some heavy thundery showers making their way northwards up the western side of the UK. More central and eastern parts of the country are likely to stay drier and sunnier, and temperatures are going to be similar to tomorrow, really. Again, likely to see highs of 32 or 33 before something perhaps cooler by the weekend.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GBNews.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, 872. That's the number of illegal migrants that invaded our southern border in just one day this week, with more to come in the heat wave. And yet the establishment is still too squeamish to turn the boats back. So, is Douglas Murray right that the way to solve the crisis is to send illegal migrants to the North London liberal elite heartland of Islington, right next to the home of Slippery Starmer? My superstar panel are ready and waiting to debate that proposition. And tonight, I'm joined by sensational debut and Esther McVeigh, alongside our returning Tuesday favourites Calvin Robinson and Rebecca Reid. Plus, as hysterical lefties call for Jillian Keegan to be sacked after this hot mic hiccup.
Does anyone ever say, you know what, you've done a good job because everyone else has sat on their and done nothing? No signs of that, no?
Is the whole affair, engineered by woke ITV News, just the perfect example of how our media is broken? We'll debate that in mere moments. Elsewhere, as Princess Diana's brother, Earl Spencer, gives bombshell evidence over her infamous interview with Martin Bashir, is the full extent of the BBC's cover-up still to be revealed? Well, the esteemed journalist and royal expert Tom Bower reports on this critical story implicating our state broadcaster later in Uncancelled. And woke snowflakes send a chill over the Bake Off tent. Producers of the hit show say there will be no more international theme weeks after receiving complaints for gags like this.
Although I don't feel like we should make Mexican jokes because people will get upset.
Oh, no Mexican jokes at all?
I don't think so.
What, not even one?
Not even one.
Well, the celebrity chef and restaurateur Anthony Warrell Thompson's furious about this. He says it's ridiculous. He'll be live shortly. And new Greatest Britain Union Jackass before the night is out. Stand by, though. Tomorrow's newspaper front page is hot off the press, straight after Aaron Armstrong with the headlines.
Very good evening to you. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Birmingham City Council's deputy leader says local government is facing a perfect storm after the authority declared itself effectively bankrupt. Sharon Thompson says councils across the country are facing similar pressures due to inflation and adult social care. All new spending in Birmingham will stop immediately and only vital services which are required by law will be protected. The Labour-run council has admitted it's unable to settle a £760 million bill for equal pay claims. The government is to relax planning permission for new onshore wind farms. The changes, which come into force immediately, mean communities can apply to their local authority to have turbines built. The government hopes the new rules will help avoid a potential rebellion from some of its backbenchers. Shadow Energy Secretary Ed Miliband says the ban on new onshore farms has led to higher energy costs.
Government is being held to ransom by a bunch of Tory backbenchers who since 2015 have stopped onshore wind being built in England. And that has raised bills for families by £180 for every family in Britain. You know, we're going through a cost of living crisis. Surely now those individuals, those Conservative MPs can see that it's much better to have onshore wind built and cut bills for families.
The Schools Minister says the government's been very proactive in dealing with the concrete crisis and has been issuing guidance since 2018. Speaking to GB News, Nick Gibbs' comments come after Education Secretary Jillian Keegan was forced to apologise for using strong language while expressing her frustration at the situation. Both Ms Keegan and Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, are under growing pressure as more than 100 schools across the UK have fully or partially closed. Laughing gas is to become an illegal Class C substance by the end of this year. Those caught using nitrous oxide could face up to 2 years in prison and unlimited fines. Those caught dealing or producing it could be jailed for up to 14 years under the new rules. It's part of a government pledge to tackle antisocial behaviour. One person's died, another is in a critical condition after a crash involving a 52-seater coach and a car in West Wales. The collision took place on the Cleddau Bridge in Pembrokeshire. It left one of the drivers trapped and had to be taken to hospital by air ambulance. Police say the road is currently closed and they've advised drivers to take alternative routes. And Spain's Women's World Cup winning coach has been sacked amid the fallout from the Luis Rubiales scandal. Jorge Vilda was the only member of the team's coaching staff not to resign in protest at the behaviour of Rubiales during the medal ceremony when he kissed a player on the lips. Rubiales is refusing to resign, but he has been banned by FIFA. Vilda's assistant, Montse Toma, has been named as his successor and becomes the first woman to hold the position. That is it from me for the moment here on GB News. Now it's back over to Dan.
Tomorrow's News Tonight now in our Media Buzz. First front pages are in hot off the press. What a fine mess. That's the grim headline in the Metro, which says water companies have been blatantly breaking the law by dumping waste during sunny weather. Sewage can only be deliberately released after rain. NHS staff have been told to watch out for concrete danger signs, reports The Eye. According to the newspaper, managers in 7 NHS hospitals are fighting to prevent catastrophic failure from the crumbling concrete that has shut some schools. My superstar panel back with me now. Former Conservative Cabinet Minister Esther McVey, the Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson, and the best-selling author Rebecca Reed. Now, Education Secretary Jillian Keegan proved again today she has no qualms about using colourful language after telling school chiefs to, quote, get off their backsides and respond to a survey on crumbling concrete. Of course, she was caught being more explicit in this hot mic moment released by woke ITV News yesterday.
But we will get a plan, and every single one of them will be done.
OK, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just 2 moments.
Does anyone ever say, you know what, you've done a good job because everyone else has sat on their and done nothing? No signs of that, no?
Now, for some, including myself, that outburst has actually enhanced Keegan's reputation. But that hasn't stopped the media witch hunt, with calls now for her to lose her job. One Conservative MP told the Daily Telegraph the way she's conducted herself, in particular in that ITV interview, shows she's absolutely selfish and shameless and not fit to stay in office. It's a damning indictment of Rishi Sunak and the people he has appointed in his cabinet. But for me, actually, it was the Daily Telegraph's Stephen Edgington who expertly summed up why this Westminster circus proves the British MSM is now broken.
It's so tiresome defending Keegan, but this hot mic scandal is the perfect example of our broken media. This is not a story serving the public interest. It is clickbait for Twitter and was very poor form for ITV to release it. I actually think it makes Keegan look all right.
Mr. McVeigh, look, I'm not some huge fan of Jillian Keegan. When I've met her, she seems like a perfectly nice woman, but, you know, I'll admit she's not on the side of the Conservative Party that I might like to see in power. However, I do feel like she has been stitched up by woke ITV News, because they never release hot mic moments with Labour MPs, do they? It's always Tories, and they seem to campaign for Tory ministers to lose their jobs. And is that really the role of the media?
Look, let's be honest, she lost her cool.
Yeah.
And I don't think she should lose a job or anything like that, but she spoke out of turn. And I've been watching the footage back. She'd only just finished her interview. She was still on mic, she was still on camera, and look, the truth is, if you're a senior politician, people are always trying to catch you out. You've actually got to
Do you think ITV did the right thing?
Of course they would have released it. Of course they did. We saw Gordon Brown when he said that woman was a bigot.
Bigoted woman,
and
yeah.
that was when he'd driven away in the car, but he'd left the mic on. People will do that. So to think otherwise is being naive, really. This is what people are going to do.
What's she like, Esther? Good woman, competent?
Of course she is. And look, interesting what you said there. She probably went up in your estimation. I got into a taxi afterwards and the taxi driver said, look, it didn't bother me at all. Yeah. She was deeply frustrated. She's worked really hard. Yeah. And you could just see the frustration. So there was an element of sympathy for
I guess
her.
I just don't like the way that the media often creates these circuses. I mean, look, this is a very serious issue, the concrete in schools, a very serious issue. But to blame it simply on this government, and especially the most recent Education Secretary, actually ignores decades of neglect.
Look, but there's a couple of stories here. She was incredibly unlucky. This had been sort of a pass the parcel of the concrete since the 1990s.
And it's exploded on her.
Unfortunately, she was there. Yeah, exactly. So I absolutely get that. However, when you're a Secretary of State and you go out to do an interview on it, you are there. Nobody's going to thank you for it. You are there to actually confront the issue, deal with the issue. And so, exactly right.
Calvin Robinson, you can't stand Jillian.
I want to put it that way on air, but
Really? Why?
I've been on panels with her before, and she's argued against me instead of the lefty on the panel. She is not a Conservative in any way, shape, or form.
So she's one of these sort of Lib Dem wets.
But that's not what that's not the reason I dislike her.
Okay.
I mean that was stupid because she was fiddling with her microphone. She knew she was on camera. She knows ITV aren't friendly to the Tories, and still she says something like that on it. That's stupid. But I don't believe in cancel culture, so she shouldn't lose her job for that.
No.
She should lose her job for being incompetent. Now, I've seen so many Tories briefing her on education policy, trying to help her do her job, and she still stands there in the Palace of Westminster spouting absolute woke claptrap. She didn't help with the trans issue, the queer issue, the Black Lives Matter issue. She's not really doing her job as an education secretary. So for that reason, she should go. It's detrimental for children's education, her being the education secretary.
Rebecca Reid, I guess for me it's how quickly the media turn these stories into witch hunts.
Yeah, well, it's not...
So, lose her job. No, she made a mistake.
The only people calling for her to lose her job are Tories or very conservative people on the internet. People like me going, haha, lol, she said a bad swear word. Well, it's funny. It's made her a bit of a legend. People like it. It's the best thing she could have done for her own
Well, people are
reputation.
comparing her to Nicola Murray in the thick of it, so I'm not sure that's the comparison you want.
That is more likeable than most Tories on Twitter.
Secretary.
My point here would be, it's at the end of the day, ITV's job is to make the best TV possible. And are you really telling me that if we had somebody here who were fiddling with a microphone, you had just finished talking to them, and they said something really inflammatory that'd be amazing content, we wouldn't use it?
I wouldn't.
Come on.
No, I said this on the show last night.
That's us being journalists.
Genuinely, no. It's not.
I'd use
gotcha
it. I'd use
journalism.
it for anyone.
It's gotcha journalism. I don't do it. I think it's cheap.
But it's
I think
her
it
responsibility.
completely denigrates trust. Because look, I don't think journalists should be pals with politicians, but I do believe that we have an ethical code, and you should know this as a journalist, Rebecca. You're on the record when you're doing the interview.
You still
as
have a
soon as the
microphone on,
interview
and you are stupid
stops.
enough, and I say stupid things with the microphone on every single week.
Can I just say, I love Dan even more than I did before to know that I could have said something
I know, we can all
awful
go
and
to
he
the
would
green
not
room
have
and
done.
say something controversial.
But as a senior politician, I would never think that of any journalist. I think they
Do
think
you
I've
think you're
got
on the
gold
record at all
dust.
times if you've got
Yes,
a mic?
you're always on the record.
It was great content. I would have used it in a hot.
Yeah, but what it's done...
It's funny.
Yeah,
It's a
but
good
exactly.
track on Twitter.
But what it's done is cheapen and make a circus out of actually what is quite a
You
serious
can't
issue.
do that if the person doesn't do that
But
knowing the person.
speaking on that front, Radio 2's Jeremy Vine has been forced to apologise after following up a news report on the concrete crisis with a Beyoncé song that many listeners thought was just too clever to be a coincidence. Make sure, by the way, you listen to the lyrics that Beyoncé sings here.
Martin Axford makes the point, France has banned rack concrete. We accept it. That says it all. Successive governments in this country have been incapable of keeping our kids safe. Saw some film of Harry and Meghan dancing to Beyonce the other day. Here she is.
Remember those walls I built? Well, baby, they...
The BBC wouldn't comment on that today. But come on, he shouldn't have to apologise.
It was a tongue-in-cheek apology. It was playful. People were laughing about it on the internet. It is funny. The bit that it cuts off, the rest of that lyric is they all came tumbling down.
Yeah.
And listen, if a school had fallen down and children had been killed, we'd be having a very different conversation. But at the moment, that's another funny thing from the internet.
Not yet. Rebecca Reid, Calvin Robinson, Esther McVeigh, do stand by, because coming up, as the establishment elite refuse to take tougher action, is the author Douglas Murray right that the way to deal with our borders crisis is to send illegal migrants to Islington, the home of slippery Starmer? My superstar panel return to debate that, and we'll have more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages for you too. But next, the Great British Bake Off has culled international theme weeks because gabs like these were deemed offensive.
Although I don't feel like we should make Mexican jokes because people will get upset.
Oh, no Mexican jokes at all?
I don't think so.
What, not even one?
Not even one.
So is the hit show losing its charm at the hands of the woke mob? Celebrity chef and restaurateur Anthony Worrell Thompson hits out at these half-baked TV execs. He's live right after this.
This September, the GB News family is back together. From breakfast, right across the day, breaking the latest stories, and every evening. And don't forget the weekend. We've got the whole of the UK covered. Every week, we'll be hearing your views from up and down the country, with fun, lively and intelligent conversation with the biggest guests. This September, we'll meet Chris and John. Thank you for choosing GB News. We're proud to be Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
You love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Tom Bell with exclusive royal bombshells on the way, but first, silly, lovable, sometimes risque, the Great British Bake Off and Alison Hammond appeared a match made in heaven ahead of its new look 14th season. But unfortunately for Alison, the chief concern for the show's producers is to avoid causing offence by axing national theme weeks. Now, that's after the Mexican special last year caused a stir, as some viewers of PC Channel 4 said these gags from Fielding and his former sidekick Matt Lucas were racist. Watch.
Hello, Noel. Are you excited for Mexican week?
I'm really excited. Although I don't feel like we should make Mexican jokes because people will get upset.
Oh, no Mexican jokes at all?
I don't think so.
What, not even one?
Not even one. So is Mexico a real place?
I think so. What? I think it's like Xanadu.
Like Oz?
Yeah, like Cleethorpes.
Now, reflecting on that episode to the Lefty Guardian, executive producer Karen Smith said, I hold my hands up to the theme weeks. We don't want to offend anyone. But the world has changed and the joke fell flat. We're not doing any national themes this year. So the woke mob win again by erasing something clearly completely inoffensive. Joining me now, the restaurateur and celebrity chef Anthony Worrell Thompson. Anthony, great to have you. Do you agree with me that this decision by Channel 4 is just ridiculous? Because if this is where you start going, saying you can't have theme weeks on the Great British Bake Off, what are we saying? That we can't make foreign dishes soon? That we can't go to restaurants, maybe an Indian restaurant, a Chinese restaurant, a Mexican restaurant that isn't owned by an Indian, a Chinese, a Mexican person? I mean, where does this end?
It's complete nonsense. I mean, it's, as William Shakespeare would say, it's much ado about nothing. I mean, I can't believe the small minority who don't like these programmes don't have an on-off button on their televisions. They can't just turn it off. The majority of people enjoy the programme. You know, you've got Prue Leith, she's a cheeky little one, Holly-haired, he's a bit serious, but it's a light-hearted show. They like to have a bit of fun. Some of the jokes are pretty average, I have to say, but who cares? You know, it's a food programme with a bit of fun.
Well, indeed. And aren't we just paying tribute to other cultures, Anthony, by making cakes from that country? I mean, we don't try and stop people in Mexico making eaten messes.
Absolutely. I'm sure they do it very badly. But I do think chefs need to be... I mean, Jamie Oliver got in trouble a few years ago when he did some sort of cultural, you know, tried to say something was authentic. All chefs have got to say is, this isn't my interpretation of, say, a Thai green curry or whatever. Don't say it's the genuine thing. Say this is... all food can be improved. And I don't believe that our food industry would be anything without chefs always trying to improve things. You know, as long as the food tastes good, does it really matter if we stick to the rules?
And isn't the whole idea, Anthony, I mean, you tell me, because you're one of our top chefs, but this isn't the whole idea that you borrow from lots of different cultures and that we learn from the Japanese or the Mexicans, and actually there's nothing wrong with that.
Totally. I mean, I nick things. I don't borrow them. I nick things all the time. With
You just admit it. I love it. but Anthony, you'll be accused of cultural appropriation probably in this day and age.
I mean, I've got 8,000 cookbooks, and I search through these cookbooks for ideas, and I nick a little bit here, a little bit there, and I think when I practice the food, play with the food, I think I've made that a little bit better. You know, that's what chefs do. Decent chefs want to play with food and come out with a better result. But I mean, as far as this programme is concerned, it's so pathetic that the minority have such loud voices.
You're right, that's the issue, isn't it? If you give in to the vocal minority, actually, it's everyday viewers who are going to be annoyed because they loved the theme weeks. They thought it was great having a cultural week. And I remember growing up at school, we always had cultural weeks where you would bring food from a particular culture, you'd try out making a dish like that. And I feel like the world has completely lost the plot when that is considered offensive. But it feels like that's where we're at, and we've got to fight back against it, don't we?
I mean, the world's gone absolutely mad, PC mad. I mean, I'm an old enough person to say, I don't give a monkeys, you know. I'm going to say what I want to say, you know, and it offends people. I didn't mean to offend them. The programme didn't mean to offend anybody. They were just having some light-hearted fun. And surely that's what entertainment's all about.
Yeah, I mean, come on. It's the least offensive programme in the world. And these idiots, the permanently offended, still managed to get offended by it. You couldn't make it up. So great to speak to you. That is the chef and restaurateur, Anthony Worrell-Thompson. But our resident royal biographer, Tom Bauer, will be live in the studio soon. First, though, the weather.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again. As we go through the next 24 hours, some of us will have a bit of low cloud and fog overnight, but then it's the return of the hot sunshine tomorrow, albeit with the chance of a few showers. Looking at the big picture, and you can see high pressure dominating the weather across the UK, but we are going to have something of an easterly wind pushing its way in, and on that easterly, we're going to drag in some low cloud, some sea fog in from the North Sea, affecting eastern parts of England and also eastern Scotland, where we're likely to see a little bit of drizzly rain overnight. Elsewhere, further south and west, clear skies, a few pockets of mist and fog though, and temperatures not dropping a huge amount. Some places staying above 20 Celsius tonight, a tropical night for some, but a difficult night for sleeping. A cloudy start then down the eastern side of the UK on Wednesday, but that low cloud, that murk, is going to quite quickly burn back towards the coast for most of us. I say for most because across eastern parts of Scotland we're likely to hold on to some of that low cloud. Otherwise, lots of sunshine around, but perhaps a bit cloudier for some, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland. Look at those temperatures though, a little bit higher than today, likely to see highs around 32 or 33 Celsius. Into Thursday, and there's the chance of some heavy thundery showers making their way northwards up the western side of the UK. More central and eastern parts of the country are likely to stay drier and sunnier, and temperatures are going to be similar to tomorrow, really. Again, likely to see highs of 32 or 33 before something perhaps cooler by the weekend.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Coming up, as Princess Diana's brother Earl Spencer gives evidence over her infamous interview with Martin Bashir, is the full extent of the BBC's cover-up still to be revealed? Esteemed journalist Tom Bauer joins me live in the studio soon. But next, has the author and political commentator Douglas Murray come up with the perfect solution for the Channel crossings by saying we should send them to where illegal migration is favoured most, starting, I love this, with the North London Liberal elite in Islington. My superstar panellists standing by to debate that proposition. We're back in 3.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Now let's return to the prize news tonight. Now in our media buzz, more front pages are in. In fact, we only have one, and it's the Daily Star that splashes on the Great Fall of China. Maybe not a lead story for most, but this is a digger driver who has been arrested after driving his excavator through the 700-year-old Great Wall of China, one of the 7 wonders of the world, in a determined attempt to create his own shortcut to work. They also have up there in the top right, Gnome Alone. Burglars use little fellas to rob houses. And they've got Jillian Keegan mocked up in a dunce's hat, saying it's someone else's fault. And that is the only newspaper we've got. Their thought for the day, Daily Star's thought for the day, I can fix it, but it's gonna cost you. Who needs any other newspapers, right, when you've got the Daily Star? More on the media buzz now, though, with tonight's superstar panel. Former Conservative Cabinet Minister under David Cameron, Theresa May and Boris Johnson, Esther McVeigh. The Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson and best-selling author and newspaper columnist Rebecca Reid. Now, sometimes it seems like the weather is our only defence against the relentless invasion of our southern border, with sunshine always followed by an unmanageable influx of illegal migrants. But with Rishi Sunak refusing to take the drastic action needed by leaving the ECHR and introducing a turn-back policy, political commentator and author Douglas Murray has come up with what I think is an ingenious solution for the small boats emergency himself, writing, "Stop sending the migrants to corners of Liverpool. Work out the parts of the country that are most in favour of illegal migration. Islington springs to mind. And send the illegal migrants there. When their streets are full of the consequences, they might realise the most basic fact of all, you cannot put this off till tomorrow." Now, Murray's brainwave might sound far-fetched, but it's exactly what Florida Governor Ron DeSantis did over in the US, flying migrants from Texas to the holiday destination of the liberal elites, Martha's Vineyard. And of course, Calvin Robinson, the very appealing thing here is that Mr. Open Borders, Slippery Starmer, happens to reside in Islington too. So this is a serious point from Douglas Murray, isn't it?
It is, because when DeSantis did it, it worked. He shipped all the illegal immigrants up to Martha's Vineyard and they quickly sent them back, didn't they? All these people that were clamouring for open borders. And we'll have the exact same situation. Send them all to Islington, see what happens. But that's just a short-term statement, isn't it? Really and truly, we need to turn the boats back. We need to process the claims and deport anyone who is unsuccessful in their claim. And we need to get on with it.
Esther McVeigh, do you think it's a good idea from Douglas Murray to send the illegal migrants to a suburb like Islington?
Spot on. Absolutely, I do. Turning the boats round, though, I don't think it is as simple as that. We don't have any international water to be able to do it, so it is a complicated issue.
Gunships, Esther, gunships.
Well, you see, I'm working within the bounds of what is possible, the art of the possible there. Giving $500 billion to France, I don't agree with that either. No. I mean, they've got a worse problem than ours. So one less they send to us. They're not going to do it. So I think you've got to say, the Rwanda policy. We need to get that sorted. We need to say there is somewhere else that you will be going. There is a third country you will be going to. So that is the way we get it sorted. And I've had people come to me, engineers, people who work in Border Force, and they say, we're making it too easy in a way. We've got to think about how France will say, we will stop them. And it could be that we don't have our Border Force out in sea taking them straight over to our shores. It has to be an illegal act from France. And we will arrest them when they arrive our shores. Yes, monitor them, look, see what's going on. But France needs to know there's a consequence.
Of course.
To not keeping them on their shores. Yeah. And at the moment, that isn't happening.
Exactly. So what you're proving is there is much more that can be done. But Rebecca Reid, you disagree with Calvin and Esther on this, and you say Douglas Murray is bonkers for wanting to send the illegal migrants to Islington. Why not?
I disagree. I lived in Islington for 10 years. I was very happy there. I now live in South West London because I am a class traitor, but in my soul, I'm North London liberal metropolitan elite, and I lived in ex-council housing alongside some people who had been immigrants, and I was very happy there and very comfortable with it. 33% of people living in Islington are non-British, so it's a very diverse borough. And it's a very welcoming borough, and generally studies show that the more diverse a borough is or a place is. Also, I'm very upset that you called Islington a suburb. We were not a suburb. We're in central London. I think, honestly, I would be interested to see what happened. I don't think it would be the problem that everybody's making it out to be. I think a more sensible suggestion is that we have a properly set up, ethically run processing place that people can be taken to in the UK, because I do not agree with putting people on planes and sending them away. And I also don't think that Rwanda taking like 200 or 500 people, whatever it's going to be, is a...
It's a lot more than that. That isn't the case.
It's not a huge number.
And it's
I know Suella said that isn't the case.
Again, it always goes back to... It's not cruel and it's not nasty and it's not punitive, but it is a deterrent. And I never understand how both of those statements can be true, and yet they're interchangeably used.
And we need more third countries to send them to. You're quite right, not just Rwanda. We need more.
But why third countries? Why can't we have our own process? Why can't we have what Australia had, which is a very reasonable, sensible processing process?
No, the whole point with Australia...
If you say gunboats...
No, but the whole point with Australia is that, and they were so criticised for this, but it literally stopped the boats overnight, is that the offshore processing on islands like Nauru were criticised for being incredibly tough. They were not the types of places that you wanted to be, and that was why it provided a deterrent, and it smashed the people smuggling gangs.
And also, the other thing that we never talk about that really would be helpful would be more investment in cybersecurity and understanding how these gangs work and infiltrating them. Because if you can cut people smugglers off at the legs, not literally, then you can try and get rid of this problem.
What you're saying is it's a multi-pronged approach, but also, and all of the Rwanda is part of that. Making sure France stops is part of that. To make sure there is deterrence is part of that.
For me,
stopping the smugglers is part of that.
But for me, it's centring, remembering that these are all human people who are trying to have a better life, not characterising them as illegals or invaders, but realising those are humans who are just trying to improve their lives.
You're being very naive, I'm afraid.
I'm sorry, I say it every time.
I would get
on a legal boat.
I'll tell you why you're being very naive. These people, number one, they're coming from France, a first world country. Number two,
Would you want to be
it's
in a camp in
provable
Calais?
that the vast majority of them are economic migrants.
Yeah, who want a better
and
life.
many of them, by the way, many of them, Rebecca, are criminals.
But they want
who
a
are
better
being
life.
sent to our country to become part of criminal gangs. And I don't even want to tell you what a lot of these guys
But being
get
a
up to,
criminal is
okay?
a whole
So I
different
think,
thing.
Rebecca, you're being naive. It's very sweet, but I think it's very naive.
You can't blame them for wanting to leave France, though, can you? Yeah.
Well, believe me, after I was in France for 3 days the other week, I couldn't wait to get out of there, but that's a whole other story
I like
I've already
France,
told you about.
listen,
Now, for
the
the
need
latest
to-
extraordinary twist in the football furore that has divided Spain, Spanish football president Luis Rubiales remains in post despite planting this kiss on team captain Jenny Hermoso after their triumph over England in the World Cup final. However, that team's coach, the women's team coach, arguably a national hero, Jorge Vilda, has been sacked simply because he was spotted applauding a speech last weekend where the embattled Rubiales refused to resign. Watch that moment.
No voy a dimitir. No voy a dimitir. No voy a dimitir.
So he wins the World Cup for Spain, then punted into touch within a fortnight. The question is, how long will it be before the baying mob can count Rubiales himself as their next sculpt? I mean, this seems very quickly, this seems extraordinary, sacking the coach. What did he do wrong? What did the manager do wrong, Esther?
It seems to me they can't get rid of the real villain of the piece, as it seems, so they're getting rid of his friend.
Is he really a villain, though, Calvin
I don't
Rubiales?
understand it. I honestly
Yes,
don't
he is a
understand what all the
villain.
hoo-ha is about.
Yes, he is a
What did I
villain.
miss?
She found it hilarious after
She didn't.
the kiss.
She was very clear. She said she didn't find it comfortable. You find me a woman in this country who hasn't acted like she was OK for a second after somebody touched her inappropriately.
You were not that heated up when the female horse owner went over and snogged the male jockey.
We've never talked about that.
Well, it happened.
What jockey? What horse owner?
It happened. I'll show you the footage.
I have literally no idea what you're talking about.
Okay.
What's wrong with an apology and moving on?
But he hasn't apologised.
But getting,
if he had apologised,
getting some
if
sort
he
of
had said,
conclusion.
If he had said, I completely misread that situation, I really behaved inappropriately, I am sorry, and she said, OK, fair enough, then fine, we move on. But he hasn't.
No, people don't move on. People don't move on. No.
We could.
You apologise.
You don't move on if somebody
you give
keeps
in
going,
to the pitchfork-waving mob and they still want to get rid of you.
You cannot snog somebody who is your...
he didn't
It's so wildly
That's
inappropriate.
how sport is.
That is a word. It's not how sport is, and it's not how sport should be. It is horrific. The fact that you can have one of the greatest days of your professional life and some greasy, oily, gross man can shove his face in your face is wrong.
OK, Rebecca Reid, Calvin Roberts.
I would have given him a clap. I can tell you that much. I would have given him a
And that's
slap.
what women need to be empowered to do.
Well, there you go.
Teach women that you just...
Exactly.
Knee in the groin.
Or a knee.
Knee in the groin.
Watch out,
Yeah,
Calvin.
I'm with
Don't
you.
mess with Esther McVeigh or Rebecca.
I
on
wouldn't
this
dream
floor.
of it.
Now, coming up, as Birmingham City Council, the largest local authority in Europe, is driven to bankruptcy by its Labour councillors. Is this a sinister forewarning of the damage Slippery Starmer and co could do to the national economy? Find out as we reveal the nominations for tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. But next, is the BBC to blame for covering up the circumstances around Martin Bashir's infamous 1995 interview with Princess Diana? And has the mainstream media been too kind in its coverage of the controversial business magnate Mohammed Al Fayed, who, of course, died nearly 26 years to the day after his son Dodi did in that Paris tunnel with Diana? Well, the distinguished royal biographer Tom Bower, who flew to Paris on Al Fayed's helicopter in the hours after Diana's death, he's live in the studio with more on those blockbuster stories. Don't go anywhere. Bower live in just 2 minutes' time.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. And breaking tonight, Princess Diana's brother Earl Spencer has spoken in court over claims that the BBC is concealing evidence of a cover-up relating to Martin Bashir's infamous 1995 interview with the late Princess. Asked whether he conspired with Bashir to persuade his sister to take part in the notorious Panorama interview after the Beeb wrongly accused the Earl of supplying Bashir with bank statements before the controversial broadcast, he replied simply, "No, I did not." Now, the court case is seeking the release of further documents that could prove how the British Bashing Corporation tried to cover up the scandal over a number of years. And Tom, this is a bombshell case that will actually pile pressure on the current BBC Director General, Tim Davie. You won't have heard about this case because the BBC doesn't want to cover what's going on. But talk to me about what's happened today.
Well, what happened today is very simple, that in 1998, Steve Hewlett was the editor of Panorama, who I knew very well, obviously.
Because
with
you worked
Bashir,
at
I worked there and I knew well. Worked with Bashir and knew that he was giving Diana these fabricated bank statements which suggested to Diana that her closest and dearest were receiving money to undermine her. When that truth came out just months after that amazing interview she gave Panorama, Hewlett conspired with others to conceal that truth because he knew the interview was great, he'd lose his job if it happened. And that cover-up...
And he has now passed away, Steve.
But he is dead, unfortunately, but he was a good man, but on that he was terrible. But he conspired not only with then Tony Hall, the Director of News and Current Affairs, but also the Director General, John Burt, who knew the truth too. Now, what has happened today is quite extraordinary because one man called Andy Webb pursued the BBC to release documents about 2 or 3 years ago. And those documents, heavily redacted, showed that Tony Hall was lying when he said about this bank statement, the relationship with Spencer. But more than that, they showed that the cover-up went to the top, except that the BBC didn't want to admit that. So they appointed a judge, Lord Dyson, to investigate what happened. But they gave him very limited terms of reference so that he wouldn't get to the truth. And he, not understanding television, made some catastrophic errors by not naming Steve Hewlett and John Burt, the Director General, as culprits in all this, putting all the blame onto Tony Hall. So what's happened today is they're trying hard to show that the cover-up went much further than the BBC has so far admitted. And what is perplexing about all this is that Tim Davie has no reason at all to defend the cover-up. Tim Davie, the current Director General...
So why is it?
Because he is being driven by the bureaucracy. Because, as we said before in this programme, he's not a politician, he's not a programme maker. He doesn't understand what he is letting himself in for.
Yeah, but the problem is here, though, Tom, he is fighting forces that I think are going to end up overpowering the BBC because you've got Earl Spencer, obviously Diana's brother, and look, he's a controversial figure and people have very divided opinions on him, but he is backed in this by Prince William.
But more than that, the thing about Charles Spencer is Charles Spencer is completely in the right in this. He was deceived by Bashir. Then he was deceived by the BBC. And when he then said to the BBC, "What are you doing?" they ignored him.
When they tried to implicate him.
Well, they tried, and they implicated him and did everything they could to pile it onto him and discredit him. And now Tim Davie, instead of saying, have all the documents, let's get to the truth, end this cover-up, is perpetuating the cover-up. That, in the end, will swallow him as well.
Yeah, and Prince William won't let this lie.
Well, I hope no one does. No. Let's hope the judges agree to release these apparently 3,000 documents, which the BBC said did not exist.
I know,
that is the extraordinary thing.
It's disgraceful. I mean, look, I would go as far to say that this is the biggest cover-up in modern media history, and we have to see these documents. I appreciate the Jimmy Savile scandal was also very bad for the BBC in terms of cover-up, but this is potentially, given the seismic implications that it had.
Well, the cover-up is that the BBC have denied they had any documents.
I know.
Then they released 70, which they said for 20 years they didn't have. Now they said that the 70 was all, and now they're admitting there are another 3,000. Why are they lying?
And we must see them. Look, we did reach out to the BBC for comment earlier today. They have refused to provide one. Now, the death of Mohammed Al-Fayed last week came just one day before the 26th anniversary of his son's death alongside Princess Diana in Paris. And Tom, you knew Al-Fayed very well. You had a long-running feud with the former Harrods owner. And what was very fascinating to me is you were actually on his helicopter flying to the Ritz in Paris, I think within 24 hours after the death of Diana. So how did it go from you being close with him at that point to all of a sudden becoming really one of his...
Well, it's a very simple story. What happened was I was writing a biography of a man called Tiny Rowland, who was Fayed's great enemy. And, of course, the one person who was going to help me against Rowland was Fayed, and he loved me, and we got on very well. And he gave me loads of material that he collected about his enemy, Rowland. And when my book came out, every counter in Harrods had a copy of my book on the shelf. So that went very well.
Sales, yeah.
So I then got on very well with him. And when he then exposed the cash for questions for the MPs, I quickly went into Harrods to see what more he had. And then there was a Diana saga, and every week I was there for 3 weeks. Every 2 or 3 days I went in there just to see him in the photographs of the couple in the south of France. Well, then when she died, I rang his office and he liked me. He said, well, go to Paris and talk to all the staff who were with her just the day before she died. And when I was at the Ritz, I was absolutely shocked because I suddenly realised that Fayed, who obviously was accused of all sorts of terrible things by Rowland, was bugging me, was bullying his staff, was distorting the truth, and most important of all, the dash from the Ritz to the Champs-Élysées flat by Diana and Dodi had been orchestrated by Fayed. And that is what he wanted covered up.
And so is your contention, Tom, then, that is why he spent years trying to perpetuate something which has been disproven in multiple inquiries, that the royal family was in some way behind the death of Diana?
Absolutely. The whole point is that Fayed was a coward and didn't want to admit that he was responsible for the dash from the Ritz.
And he didn't believe it himself.
Of course he did. He knew exactly. I mean, Fayed was a professional liar. He was a briber. He was a burglar. He was a bully. He was the most appalling man. And he would never accept responsibility for all his crimes. And the most terrible thing which I realised that day in Paris was that he had an ex-chief superintendent of Scotland Yard, a man called John McNamara, who was the briber-in-chief, who was the bully-in-chief, who was the blackmailer-in-chief, who did all of Fayed's dirty work, who destroyed lives, who, when women were raped by Fayed, he would intimidate them not to make complaints. And that is the way Fayed operated, which I realised in those 24 hours in Paris. And that is why all the ridiculous eulogies for Fayed since his death, especially on the BBC, were just outrageous. This man was a criminal. He got away with it because he corrupted the police, the royal family, politicians and all the rest of it in this country. And this country allowed a man like Fayed to prosper, which was absolutely outrageous.
And we should say, obviously, John McNamara
is dead.
Indeed. So,
but I said it in his lifetime too.
You're brave, Tom. Always brave, Tom Bell. Thank you so much. Now, it's time now to reveal tonight's greatest Britain and Union Jackass. My superstar panel return, Esther McVeigh, who's your greatest Britain nominee.
Well, that has to be Lord Sumption, the fearless libertarian and ex-Supreme Court judge who now wants to be elected to the National Trust because he wants to get rid of all that wokery in there. And he is a spectacular historian too.
Great man. Do you know, he was actually my first ever guest on this show here on the first night of GB News, so he has a very special place for me too. Calvin Robinson, your nominee.
Isabel Vaughan Spruce. She ran the March for Life in London this weekend, had thousands of people praying for the sanctity of life. It was fantastic to see. Well done.
Great stuff. And Rebecca Reid, your nominee.
Mine is Syed Dye, who's the artist behind the portrait of Theresa May.
Well, this has divided opinion, though, Rebecca.
I think it is fantastic. Honestly, I think it is a really, really beautiful piece of art.
Can we see it?
I hope so. Otherwise, this is a really boring segment from me. OK, well, maybe Google it.
I think, no, there it is.
There you go.
You like
I think it's a really, really
Esther, Calvin, do you like it? Because a lot of people are saying it's awful.
No, it's fine.
Esther?
Well, you'll certainly take a second look at it.
All of the art critics I know on Twitter love it, and I'm a big fan. I think it's a really interesting piece of work, and I think that I don't really care either way about Theresa May, but I would have a postcard of that.
Well, look, I've got to go with Greatest Britain as Lord Sumption. Well done, Esther McVeigh. Get this man on the board of the National Trust. We need him there. Couldn't agree with that more. Esther, who's your Union Jackass nominee, though?
Birmingham City Council for going bust. And the reason I say that, this is a council that goes on about equality and diversity, yet some of this money is £700 million on historic equal pay claims, an IT system that went 5 times over budget. All I'm saying is you're getting a sneak preview of what a Labour government would be like.
A sign of things to come, I'm afraid. Calvin Robinson, your Union Jackass nominee.
Sadiq Khan. On my way to March for Life, I walked past something called Black on the Square, which is a Khan-organised event to celebrate black culture, whatever that is. It sounds divisive to me. I can't imagine a white on the square, can you?
No, I don't think that would go down well somehow, Kelvin. Rebecca Reid, your nominee.
Mine is Prince William. And again, usually I am a fan of Prince William and all of the royals, but apparently we'll be attending the Rugby World Cup in France, but didn't want to turn up to see the Lionesses play.
It's much closer, isn't it?
It is much closer, but it's also his job to go to things.
Yeah, in defence of him, it is closer. I guess the trip to Australia was a very big
Maybe
deal.
they would have won if he'd turned up.
No one watches women's football, let's be honest.
Oh, Calvin, why?
I think William should have gone as well as president of the FA as well. And we could have won. We were this close to winning.
And I also just think it was a missed opportunity.
Yeah, exactly.
William.
And
That's
also,
what
people
I didn't
do watch women's
understand,
football. Women's
you know.
football is great.
And people say, oh, he doesn't want to take a first-class flight. Well, get over it, you know. Get over it. They're pumping out carbon all the time. But look, I'm actually going to go double win for our debut superstar panellist. Well done, Esther McVeigh. But of course, it's the Birmingham City Council. Bankrupt. That's what we're going to see if you go for this Labour government, mark my words. Esther McVeigh, so great to have you part of the team. Calvin Robinson, brilliant to have you back. Rebecca Reid, thank you. You've been here all summer. I'm back again tomorrow from 9 p.m. Next up, though, it's Headliners. Have an amazing night. Bye-bye.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again. As we go through the next 24 hours, some of us will have a bit of low cloud and fog overnight, but then it's the return of the hot sunshine tomorrow, albeit with the chance of a few showers. Looking at the big picture, and you can see high pressure dominating the weather across the UK, but we are going to have something of an easterly wind pushing its way in, and on that easterly, we're going to drag in some low cloud, some sea fog in from the North Sea, affecting eastern parts of England and also eastern Scotland, where we're likely to see a little bit of drizzly rain overnight. Elsewhere, further south and west, clear skies, a few pockets of mist and fog though, and temperatures not dropping a huge amount. Some places staying above 20 Celsius tonight, a tropical night for some, but a difficult night for sleeping. A cloudy start then down the eastern side of the UK on Wednesday, but that low cloud, that murk, is going to quite quickly burn back towards the coast for most of us. I say for most because across eastern parts of Scotland we're likely to hold on to some of that low cloud. Otherwise, lots of sunshine around, but perhaps a bit cloudier for some, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland. Looking look at those temperatures, though, a little bit higher than today. Likely to see highs around 32 or 33 Celsius. Into Thursday, and there's the chance of some heavy thundery showers making their way northwards up the western side of the UK. More central and eastern parts of the country are likely to stay drier and sunnier, and temperatures are going to be similar to tomorrow, really. Again, likely to see highs of 32 or 33 before something perhaps cooler by the weekend.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GBNews.
This September, the GB News family is back together. From breakfast, right across the day, breaking the latest stories, and every evening. And don't forget the weekend. We've got the whole of